Hey, this is Vince Papale. I'm a fellow Hawk brother, and of course I'm the guy from Invincible, and you're listening to Sports and Rants with Brett and Pants right here on 1851, my Hawk brothers, and the Hawk will never die.
And we are on live with former St. Joe's NBA star and current NBA Executive Vice President of Referee Operations, Mike Bantom. How are you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
We're doing great. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Sure, it's my pleasure.
So, we want to know, have you been keeping up with Hawk basketball at all? Have you been watching St. Joe's? They're getting ready for the season to start.
Yeah, I usually kind of catch up with them once the season starts a little bit. You know, the beginning of their season kind of coincides with the beginning of mine, so I'm really kind of busy with our stuff. But once we settle down a little bit, I tend to, focus a little bit more on the colleges. I was really excited by the way the team played last year, especially at the end, getting into the tournament. And I was at the A-10 tournament up here in New York, so it was exciting to watch the guys have some success and play really well. And I'm looking forward to, another great season this year.
Do you still feel that excitement for your alma mater now, watching them win the A-10 championship last year?
Yeah, well, that Hawk spirit never dies. I get excited every time I see them play and they have some success, because it just brings back the memories of what it's like to represent your school, especially one that has such a deep tradition. I get excited just watching them.
What are your thoughts about how the team will do coming up after losing 3 seniors?
Well, I'm not, like I said, I'm not too familiar with where they stand right now. It's always tough to replace graduating seniors. It really depends on some of the young guys developing and becoming better, and also who you bring in. I know they had a young sophomore, or I think a freshman or sophomore, that was part of the rotation last year, so he'll have to step up and take on a lot more responsibility. But he was a pretty good player from what I recall. And knowing Phil and Don, I'm sure they're bringing in some good athletes, and they'll recharge and be a pretty good team.
Now, you grew up in the Philadelphia area. You went to Roman Catholic High School. Did that contribute at all to choosing St. Joe's as your college of choice, or was it a toss-up with all the Big Five schools?
Well, it was a little bit of both. Growing up in Philly, you get to see all the Big Five schools play, and I was recruited by them all. And at the time, the Big Five was really, really popular, and all the teams were really good. You had, St. Joe's had just come off a run with Jack Ramsey's teams being nationally ranked, and Jack McKinney had taken over for them, but they were still a pretty really strong team and strong program. Penn was traditionally in the top 10 nationally. LaSalle had their great team under Tom Gola. Villanova actually went to the Final Four and played in the championship game. So, all the teams, all the schools were strong programs, and they were all playing exciting basketball. They were all on TV playing at the Palestra. So a young kid growing up in high school in Philly during my time couldn't help but be excited about joining one of those programs. St. Joe's just stood out to me because I liked the way they played. I liked the spirit of the team, and once I went on campus and got to know the coaching staff, it was pretty much a done deal as far as I was concerned.
Now, what can you tell us off the court about Hawk Hill which made it special, and what did you enjoy most about your time here?
Well, I just liked the whole atmosphere. Everybody was really kind of friendly and kind to one another. I think it had something to do with that Jesuit education, really focusing on the entire person as a human being. And so I never felt just like an athlete on campus. I always felt like I was a part of the student body and a part of the community. And that was important to me because I wasn't really trying to go to a big school where I would be just one of thousands. And it felt close to home. It actually was close to home, but it was also a great kind of enclosed community. Campus life was beautiful, and at the same time, I got to compete at a very high level from a basketball standpoint.
Now, like you said, the Big Five was at its peak during your playing time in St. Joe's. What was the atmosphere like on campus every time you guys went up to the Palestra and had a Big Five matchup? Was everybody excited to watch, especially the Holy War with Villanova?
Oh, it was crazy, yeah. I mean, the Palestra was live back then, and there were banners, and the student sections for each school was always well represented and loud, and they were, they'd be cheering against each other. I mean, you couldn't help but get psyched up to play in that atmosphere, and then it just went up another 10 notches whenever it was a city rivalry, city school. And then if as hard as it is to believe, when it was Villanova, it went up another couple notches. So, we'd start thinking about Villanova like the week before. It was just crazy the way the students would start getting psyched, and in effect, the team would get psyched. So yeah, it was great. I think back to those days, and I don't think there's anything that can touch it from terms of getting excited to play a basketball game.
Now, you had the opportunity to play in what's known as the biggest Holy War game in St. Joe's Villanova history during the March Madness tournament in '71. What was that like going into that? What was the excitement like on Hawk Hill?
Well, I mean, it's hard to differentiate. Any Villanova game between us and them was always just like life and death for our student body. As a player, you tried to maintain some degree of calm because you had to go out there and play, and you didn't want to get psych yourself out. But it was just it was crazy. I mean, one year, I think my sophomore year, which would have been 70-71, and you just might be what you're talking about. We played them 3 times that year.
Yeah.
We played them once out in Kansas in a early season tournament, and then we played them in the Big Five game, and then we both made the tournament, and we played each other in the first round of the NCAA. But it was interesting because they were an upperclassman dominated team, and we were a sophomore dominated team. So they had a world of experience over us, as well as they were very talented with Howard Porter and Chris Ford and guys like that. But from the first time we played them in Kansas to that NCAA game in March, we grew up a lot over the course of that season. And by the time we played them that third time, it was a real battle. I think we gave them a heck of a run. And for a team that made it to the finals of the NCAA, I thought we acquitted ourselves pretty good against them.
What do you remember most about it? Is there any moment of the game that stands out?
Yeah, it was surreal to me. I mean, I remember watching Howard Porter shoot a jump shot from so deep in the corner he was almost in the stands. And he fell down after he shot it, and it hit nothing but net. And I remember thinking to myself, it's on. It was like we were on stage, and he came out smoking, we came out smoking. It was a heck of a game. It was, the lights were on us. It was almost like there was nobody else in the gym. It was just us going at them. And unlike the first game, like I said, where we were sophomores, probably in our third or fourth varsity game, and we were probably all a little bit intimidated and out in a foreign place, we were equals at that point. We were battling them toe-to-toe. It was like heavyweight fighters. It was a great game. I think it could have gone either way. I don't remember exactly how the tide turned or what the key plays were, but I know that it wasn't a game that was decided until the end or near the end, and it was a slugfest going back and forth.
Now, was there anything that Coach McKinney instilled in you guys that made you play harder and play better in those games?
Well, I just think it was the whole spirit and the tradition of playing for St. Joe's. That's why I went there. I mean, and I think it started with Jack Ramsey, or maybe even before, I don't know, but I was familiar with Jack's teams, and to me, they always just played harder than everybody else. That whole thing about the Hawk never dies, I don't even know if today's athletes take it to heart as much as we did. We were never going to quit. I don't care, what your reputation was, what your ranking was, whether we were the favorite or you were the favorite. We were going to battle you, and it was going to start on the defensive end, and it was going to be tooth and nail until the final horn. And that's how we played, and that's how St. Joe's teams played, and that's how the reputation and the tradition was built. And I think we just bought into it. We were all young guys who came there based on the history and the tradition of the school, and we bought into it. And Jack was a disciple of Jack Ramsey, and that's what he taught. And Jimmy Lynham was a part of that staff, and Paul Westhead was a part of that staff, and all of them were guys who played under Ramsey, and we just carried that tradition forth. I mean, we didn't need to be told. We knew what we were there for and who we represented, and that's how we played the game.
So you obviously sound like you enjoy the intense coaching style that caused you to never give up on the court. But was there anything as far as what he coached that from each game to each game, like the philosophy that he brought in, was there anything innovative?
Well, I think that, one of the things that I tell everybody is I was tremendously blessed as a player. I started playing basketball late. I didn't play varsity basketball until I was a junior in high school, and even then I didn't play. I played junior varsity and dressed varsity. But my first coach was Speedy Morris, who in Philadelphia is a legend in high school basketball, but also coached at LaSalle. But he's he should be in the Hall of Fame in terms of knowing the game and teaching the game and motivating players. So the first coach I was exposed to was him, and he kind of shaped me as a basketball player. And then from there I went to St. Joe's, where I ran into guys like Paul Westhead, who is a known innovator. The whole speed-up game that's being played in the NBA now was something that he initiated and probably doesn't get enough credit for. And then Jack, as I mentioned, McKinney was a disciple of Jack Ramsey, and Jack was obviously someone who innovated the game and excelled on all levels, from college to coaching the Trailblazers. And then McKinney also has been a coach in college and in the NBA, and Lynham, who I felt really helped me with my personal development as a player when he was an assistant coach at St. Joe's. So I just think that everything that I've achieved as a player and my knowledge of the game comes from the fact that from the very first beginning of my career, in my formative years in high school and in college, I was exposed to some of the best coaches ever. I think that we adapted our game from opponent to opponent. We crafted what we were doing based on who we were playing against, but there were just some constants about our game too that we took into each game, and we tried to pretty much perform up to our standards and not necessarily be too concerned about the other team.
Here on campus, you're still considered one of the best to ever wear the crimson and gray, and you're enshrined in the SJU Hall of Fame. How does that feel to know your name lives on and your legacy lives on this campus?
Well, it's a humbling thought, but it also makes me very proud. When I went there, like I said before, I was a neophyte. I was a novice at the game. I had only played 1 year of varsity. All the Big Five schools who recruited me as a project. They knew that I had only played 1 year, and more so than what I was demonstrating at the time, they were probably recruiting me for what I could become. And so, like I said, I had a lot of help. The coaches there were phenomenal. And I worked my butt off because I really wanted to see how good I could become. I didn't have any dreams of grandeur about being an All-American or making it to the NBA at the beginning, and I would have been foolish at the time to think that way because I was not anywhere near that type of player. But I did work really hard at it, and I thought to myself that I wasn't going to put any limitations on me. I would just try to see how good I could become. That was my goal, just try to keep getting better each year. And the fact that after it was all over, I had the type of career that I did and the type of numbers that I did that still stand up over time and is recognized as one of the best to ever play for such a storied tradition, such a storied program. It's a sense of pride that I have, and it makes me really feel good.
Now, during your career here, you actually had an unbelievable opportunity in 1972 to participate in the Olympics and represent the United States. What was that like for you as a college kid, knowing you're representing the whole country playing basketball in the Olympics?
It was really a great honor. I saw the summer before that there was a U.S. team that I guess played in the Goodwill Games or the Pan American Games that took place the year before. And I remember asking my coach, what does it take to get on one of those teams? Because I think that, traditionally they invite, probably players from some of the bigger conferences to try out, because at the time you had to go to a tryout and compete against a lot of all the other college players to make the roster. And I asked McKinney about it, and he said he would look into it. And so that summer, I got an invite to come out to Colorado Springs along with 64 of the best players in college basketball to try out for the team. And once again, my expectations weren't that high. I really looked at it as an opportunity to go out and just kind of test myself against the best players in the country and really get a feel for where I really stood. You tend to play all your games in one area of the country, and you don't see some of the guys out west or some of the guys in the Midwest, and you really don't know about them other than what you read. So I just looked at it as an opportunity, along with the rest of the things that I do in the summer to work on my game and get better, to go out and work on my game and try to get better and see where I stood. And fortunately, after 2 weeks of hard practices and a bunch of drills and games, I was picked to be on the team. And it was a tremendous honor and a great accomplishment. And I really am proud of the fact that out of 64 guys, I was one of the 12 guys picked to be on the USA Olympic team.
To you, how did it feel standing on the same court as players like Doug Collins and Bobby Jones, two guys that were college standouts like yourself? What was that like from being from a small school and experiencing this with all these big-name players from big-name schools?
Well, I mean, we had a mixture of guys. Bobby was from North Carolina, but I don't know the actual size of Doug's school, but Illinois State, you don't hear a lot about them. But he was another guy who probably wasn't that well known coming into the trials, but coming out of them, had a lot more notoriety afterwards. But, there was a lot of guys like that. Most of them, like I said, were from big schools. But we had Tom Henderson was a starter. He had played for San Jacinto Junior College. And he went out there and played against all those big names and carved out a spot for himself on the team. So there was a mixture of guys. You had guys like Jim Brewer, who was from Minnesota in the Big Ten, and Dwight Jones, who was from the University of Houston, which had a big reputation with Elvin Hayes having played there, and they had just played against Kareem and UCLA a few years ago, so they were a national program. But you had a mixture of guys, some from big schools, and a few like myself from small schools, and Kermit Washington from American U, who we played in every year. So it was really a mixture and a great opportunity for guys like myself who don't usually get that big stage to showcase their talents, and also to compete against their peers and really get a sense of where you stood. So, like I said, it was a great opportunity for me. I was happy and lucky that I was able to take advantage of it and gain a place on the team.
Yeah, looking back, to go more in depth about the players who you played with, looking back at playing with Doug Collins and Bobby Jones, and etc., looking back at it, and now they're past NBA stars, do you still keep in touch with them now? And what was that experience like knowing that you first knew them before graduating St. Joe's?
Well, Doug's a long-time coach in the league and now is back into broadcasting. And Bobby is retired and living back in North Carolina. But our paths cross every now and then. I see Doug a lot more than I see some of the other guys because obviously being involved with the league and him being involved with the league, we run into each other a lot. But, we had a reunion of our team back in a couple years ago, the 40th reunion of the 72 team. And we really realized what a bond we have, based on how the game resulted and the fact that we're all still around. It's a bond that goes way beyond the normal basketball team bond. I think because of the nature of how that game ended and the stance we took, we all feel a lot closer to each other. And we went through a heck of a training period, too. I mean, there was nothing like today's athletes where, they stay in 5-star hotels and they practice in the best facilities. We went through a real training camp similar to what they put Marines through. we stayed on a naval base. We trained in a naval facilities. We lived in bunks, and we did all this. Like we practiced 2 or 3 times a day. I mean, it was a real ordeal. That even 40 years later, when we got together at our reunion, we had to laugh about the fact that by comparison, playing in the Olympics was a piece of cake. We went through a real trial, just making it through the training camp leading up to it.
Did you, as a young kid, understand the magnitude of the game that you were going into? Understand the magnitude of the Olympics at the time, with all the outside world struggles, especially with the USSR and communism?
No, I can't say that I did. I mean, I was, not only was I young at 19 or 20, but also, having grown up in the area that I did in Philadelphia, I mean, it's not like you're exposed to things the way you are now, for example. I mean, even today with the onset of media and the explosion of it and across all facets, the internet and the proliferation of channels on TV. I mean, you have to remember back in those days, we had 3 channels, if that. There was no 24-hour news cycle. So, I mean, no, we, as young kids, we were pretty naive. In fact, a lot of our training, a lot of the time we spent training, there was a lot of conversation from the coaching staff about playing against the Russians and how difficult it was going to be and how serious it was. And I'm not sure we quite got that. To us it was more of a basketball game that we thought we could win because we had a lot of faith in ourselves. But I don't think we grasped the full impact of all the politics around it until it happened. And when we saw how politics intruded into the game itself and then into the final decision and into the appeal process, then I think it started to hit home for us, and we realized that it was bigger than basketball.
Like you were mentioning, you were a young college kid, and you didn't really have the concerns that your loved ones have. Did your family have any concerns for your well-being or in West Germany?
I don't think anybody really thought of it as dangerous until the terrorist attack happened. Once again, we live in a different world today, so it's hard to look at those things through today's lenses and not feel that there should have been some fear or trepidation about being in that setting. But you have to understand that at the time, that was the first terrorist attack that ever happened. Nobody ever felt that somebody would attack the Olympics or take hostages and actually kill them. So I mean, it was a historic event for a lot of reasons. The least of which is the basketball game that they stole from us. I think the most probably the most notable thing that took place was the fact that this group used the Olympics to put forth their political platform and actually took hostages and that resulted in their death. And so it was a very sad occasion. It overshadowed the games, and it was unfortunately a precedent that we are still dealing with today.
Now, can you just real briefly take us into those final few seconds of that basketball game, what you were feeling, what the team was feeling, and the atmosphere afterwards in the locker room?
Well, I mean, it's the epitome of going from one extreme to the other on an emotional scale because, as the clock wound down, we were trying to complete a tremendous comeback from a game in which we struggled most of the game to find our rhythm and to get our game going. And then once we did, we made a comeback, finally caught up to them at the end of the game, and then with 3 seconds left, Doug Collins had the opportunity to shoot two of the most pressure-packed free throws in the history of basketball to put us ahead by a point, and he made both of them, after being knocked senseless on the foul itself when he was shooting. So it was a courageous effort on his part. I think a courageous effort on the part of our team to fight back from being down the entire game. And when the clock ran out, those two free throws were the difference between in the game, and we were ahead by a point and won the game. And so you had what you normally have at the end of such a game with so much at stake, and that is the fans poured on the court. There was celebrations going around. There was a tremendous sense of elation and relief on our part because, as I said, we worked our butts off all summer, trained like Navy SEALs practically to get to that point, and then almost let it slip through our fingers. But I think because of the tenacity that I spoke about, that I had within myself as being a Hawk player, and we had within our team as being Americans, we fought back and never gave up and won the game, only to have it reversed on an official's decision and giving them two other opportunities to inbound the ball with 3 seconds left. And ultimately, on the third one, they managed to score a basket, and then we were told that basket would count. That would be the final score, and that we, in fact, had lost the game. So we went from tremendous elation and a sense of accomplishment to extreme disappointment and disbelief that something like that could happen, and nobody would stand up and recognize that it was wrong. The locker room there was anger, there was sadness, there was disappointment, but then there was also a real sense of I don't know, just standing up for ourselves when they kind of demanded that we come out and accept our silver medals. We weren't going to accept it under those circumstances. We were told that we would be given an opportunity to file an appeal the next day if we didn't want to come out right away and accept the medal. So we decided to take that route, and we did. We filed a report or an appeal which stated all the reasons why the rules were broken and those extra opportunities should not have been given to the Russian team. And in effect, we were told that the protests that we filed were correct, but they were voted down 3-2 along political lines, with 3 communist countries voting to uphold the outcome, and 2 non-communist countries voting to overturn it. So that's when I said, it became more than basketball. It was obviously a political issue. They voted along communist lines 3-2, and we were told that we needed to accept the silver medal. But to our credit, and I believe justifiably so, we all, to the man, decided that we were not going to accept the silver medals. We hadn't earned a silver medal. We had won a gold, and unless we were going to be awarded a gold medal, we didn't want it. So to this day, that's the way it stands. 40 years later, 2 years ago, when we had our reunion, each guy, to a man, stood by that decision, stands by that decision, and that's the way it is.
Would you say that's a decision you're still proud of, and you still feel people still back you on not accepting that silver medal?
Yeah, I do. I mean, anybody I've ever spoken to believes it, stands up for us. But I don't think that was the important thing. That's not why we did it. I think we did it out of a true sense of belief that we, not so much that we were wrong, but that we were being asked to accept something that wasn't true. I've told people a million times that, if I had won a silver medal, I would be proud and humbled to accept it. I mean, how many people win a silver medal in the Olympics? So it's not about all of that. It really is about the fact that we won that game. When that game ended, we were on top. And then everything that took place after that was something that was orchestrated and had nothing to do with the original outcome of that game. So to ask us to now go up and accept a silver medal based on something that they did, we just didn't feel that was something that we wanted to be a part of. We believed in what we did, we believed in what happened, and we believed in our stance, and we still do.
Now, after a long NBA career and a long basketball career overseas, you're now working in the NBA front office, you worked at several different positions with the NBA. How did you go from a basketball player at St. Joe's to now working in the position you work in today?
Well, I mean, after I finished my career in the NBA, I moved. I went to Italy and played another 7 years over there. So all in all, I played professional basketball for 16 years. And when it was over, I really did some soul searching as to what I wanted to do with, kind of as my next career. And I felt like with the marketing degree and the interest in marketing that I had from my college days, there was a tremendous opportunity with the growth of the NBA, specifically internationally, for me to get involved with the marketing of the game and of the business of basketball, especially since I had spent a lot of time overseas and the NBA was expanding internationally. I felt this was a good road for me to go down in terms of staying involved with a game that I loved, utilizing an education that I had in the field of marketing and combining the two for a second career. And that's what I did for probably the first 10 to 12 years that I worked here at the NBA. I was involved in marketing the game internationally. I did a lot of programs and sponsorships that involved growing the game in foreign countries. And part of it was even a series of coaching clinics that I've conducted around the world, where I took a lot of NBA coaches to different countries to teach other coaches how to teach the game in their countries. And I think it had a lot to do with the growth of the game and the influx of international players that we have in our league today. I remember I took guys like Jack Ramsey and Jimmy Lynam and Jack McKinney and Paul Westhead and Hubie Brown and a bunch of guys like that everywhere, from Russia to Brazil to France and Spain and everywhere that we could go to teach the game of basketball to coaches all over the world. And after doing that for a lot of years, I was looking for a different challenge, and then I got into the player development area, where for about 10 years I spent working with all the players in the league on their off-the-court life, their transition into the league, their understanding of what it takes to be professional, how to formulate second careers for themselves when their time is up and they need to transition out of the league, and just their overall growth off the court. from transitioning in as a rookie and the rookie transition program to all of the ongoing programs that we have for our players to help them grow and continue to educate themselves while they're in the league. So I did that for a number of years, and then as I grew and became more proficient as a manager, this position opened up 2 years ago, and the commissioner asked me to take on this job and just manage this department. I had no experience as a referee, but I have a lot of experience as a manager, and so I thought of it as my next challenge, and I welcomed it, embraced it, and it is indeed challenging, but it is also pretty exciting and pretty fun. And on a night-to-night basis, I'm involved with what's going on the floor. I'm involved with how the game is being called, what new rules we put in, who referees the games, and how the games are decided. So it's an interesting and fascinating position that I'm in.
Do you have any advice you would give college students or anyone out there that would want to work in sports, eventually want to work with the NBA?
Yeah, I would say the best thing to do is, a lot of people think that you have to have a sports marketing degree or a sports degree. I mean, that's more of a new idea, and I'm certain that it's helpful. But just keep in mind that we're a major corporation, and we have all types of professionals that work here: communications people, lawyers, marketers. Everything you can think of pretty much is represented within this corporation. So you can, your passion, IT people, your passion for sports can be combined with your educational field to create a career in sports if that's your goal. And then the other thing is, I would just say, it's a very competitive field. A lot of people want to work in it. So I would say find the opportunities as early as you can to do some internships, even if they're voluntary. Get to know and get to be known by some of the people in the industry as soon as you can, so you can begin to build a reputation, because that's how you get ahead in this league, or in this business. Really is who you can get to know and who can get to know you and know your qualifications and your character, and I think that'll help you in a long way get ahead too.
All right, final question, Mike. What stands out most in your career, and what accomplishment are you most proud of?
Oh, wow. I don't know if I look at it like that. I really don't. I think at this stage in my life, I really kind of see the thing I'm most fascinated with is the overall journey. I don't think I've really hit any outstanding peaks that I'm extremely proud of, but I am proud of the fact that for a little kid that grew up in the projects at 23rd and Diamond Street in North Philly, that I am where I am today, and that I have had the experiences that I have had in my life, and that, along the way, I think that I've helped some people. I've been a pretty decent person, and I'm going to continue to try to do that as I continue to go along. But I don't think, I think that's part of my overall philosophy is not to really set any goals in terms of what it is I want to achieve, because after that you gotta reset them and find something else to get excited about. I really just keep trying to do the best I can, and I think that overall, when I look back, that there was a lot of opportunities for me to go sideways or to give up on my direction and my motivation, but somehow I've been blessed and I've managed to keep going, and I've had some pretty good success, so I'm gonna stick with that.
All right, Mike, thank you so much for coming on with us. We appreciate your time.
And sharing your stories.
Yeah, and sharing your stories. We learned a lot from you, and thank you.
All right, guys, it's been a pleasure. Go Hawks.
Yeah, go Hawks. Thanks.
Hawk will never die.
All right.
This concludes our podcast of Sports and Rants with Brent and Pants. Thank you for listening. Please follow us on Twitter at Sports and Rants. Like us on Facebook. Remember to subscribe to us on iTunes. And visit our website, www.sportsandrantz.blogspot.com. It would help our rankings on iTunes if you rate and review our podcast. Thanks, and have a good day.